Hello football fans, Chris Durrell here with DFSR.com as well as my Patreon, patreon.com/JagerBombs. Before we get into this week's NFL video, I just want to tell you a little bit about where you can go about finding my cheat sheets as well as my other content. So first up is my Patreon account. Like I said, that's patreon.com/JagerBombs. $5 per sheet, $5 per sport, I should say. There's multiple sheets for certain sports. And $10 gets you covered for all of the sheets. So right now I've got NHL just wrapped up, League of Legends waiting for the next season to begin before I get those sheets back out. We got PGA, and I do cover full tournament and Showdown. Got NBA, which is wrapped up for the season, as in the sheets. We are in the NBA Finals, or going to be in the NBA Finals here, however, pretty soon. Got the UFC package every Saturday. Soccer package with EPL just starting back up. The sheet is functioning there. We've got the baseball package, baseball season wrapping up. Going to have the sheet going into the playoffs, probably for the first couple of rounds anyway, well, as long as we got some good slates going. The NFL package is in full swing here as well. That includes my running back touch share sheet. That includes all the information on the NFL sheet. Much more to come there as well. The NASCAR package, covering all three series. And then coming soon by this weekend, I'm going to have a college football sheet up as well. So that is 10 sports. Currently up right now. The all sports package is only $10. That's a huge value. You can also get my sheets over at dfsr.com as long as you are a member. Basic members over at dfsr.com. We'll scroll down here and we'll have a look. The classic, that just gets you our projections over at dfsr.com as well as my sheets, access to the chat, and then if you upgrade to the Pro, which is $29.99 a month, $29.95, sorry, that's going to get you the lineup optimizer as well as the lineup lab and a bunch of other information. This is a view of what the lineup optimizer looks like. You're going to find it the navigation window at the top. You can also go to the player lab and start breaking stuff up down there as well. Look at all the NFL articles. We're doing a lot more content for NFL this season just because NBA and NHL are now finishing up rather than just getting started. So for a while here, we're only going to have about 4 to 6 weeks. We're only going to have NFL in terms of our optimizer tools at the moment, as well as PGA, but for the main core sports. So definitely sign up for that. As you can see, you can make up to 50 lineups. We cover all slates. We cover Showdown. We've got the limit feature, which really helps if you are multi-entering. So make sure to go over to dfsr.com, get your free trial for that today, sign up, get your membership, get the cheat sheets, and let's rock and roll. With all that said, let's jump into this week's picks. Alright, in this video I'm going to walk you through my DFS NFL cheat sheet. I'm going to show you what some of the columns mean, what some of the stats mean, how to read it when doing your research, and also a little bit into what I look for stats in terms of GPP versus cash games, and pretty much just to look into my overall scope every week and how I go about my research process and coming up with my core plays, teams to target, that sort of thing. So let's get started here. First tab here you're going to see is the matchup tab. This is where I start every week. This is just a list of every game we've got showing the slate, main slate here, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. So what you're looking for here, obviously we've got stats. We've got points per game, passing, offense, rushing, pace, red zone, O-line, opponent D-line, because we want to compare those, and fantasy points against position. So how we look at that. First of all, I'm going to be looking at team. So under team, we've got Miami. The top team's always going to be the away team. Bottom team's always going to be home. And then it shows the opponent. And the reason I show the opponent there is if we break down row 3 here, which is Miami at Jacksonville, the spread is 3, so Miami's a +3, projected for 22.3 points in a game that has a 47.5 over/under. Now, when we get into the points per game, the team offense is, again, the team, so we're on row 3 here. So Miami is averaging 19.5 points per game. Their opponent, which is Jacksonville, is allowing 26.5 points per game. I have that combined here because I just want to see which games have the possibility of being the highest scoring. So not only do I look at the Vegas total, but I will compare the team's offense and the opponent's defense, combine those points per game as well. Kind of gives us a look. For the most part, we're going to see that within that over-under. Pretty close to that number. We can also find, in terms of betting, if we see maybe a total that is like the combined total here for Jacksonville, 54.5, but the combined total for Miami's 46. So that kind of has me leaning the over in that matchup, but that's just one way that I use the sheet here. But for Keep going across the sheet. So 61%, that means Miami throws the ball 61% of the time, while Jacksonville, correlating over here with row 4, throws the ball 56.5% of the time. Then we've got yards per game in the pass versus how many yards the opponent allows per game. Same thing with rushing. We've got the percentage, the rushing yards per game, the opponent defense, and then pace. This would be seconds per play, so the higher rank here just means a team runs more plays over the course of the game. So Miami's 13th in pace while Jacksonville's 26th. That just means Miami runs more plays. So I'm looking for matchups where maybe both teams are high paced. One that kind of stands out here down the list, Tennessee is 6th in pace while Minnesota is 5th. Out of all the matchups on Sunday, there is only 2, Detroit and Arizona being the other, where both teams are top 10 in pace. So just keep that in mind when you're looking for that. More plays per game means more opportunity for fantasy points. So that's why I have that there. Red zone ranking. This is touchdowns per red zone trip. So team offense, Miami is 20th in touchdowns per red zone trip. That's inside the 20-yard line. And then we're going to compare that to the opponent's defensive red zone, how many touchdowns they have allowed per red zone trip to the opponent. So obviously lower rank, Jacksonville second. That means they've scored the second most touchdowns per red zone trip, while the defense here for Miami is 27th. So they've allowed a lot of touchdowns per red zone trip. So that adds up really nice. So you're looking for green. Anything here when you're looking at stats, green's going to be good for the team that you're looking at, red's going to be bad. Same with the opponent. Red's going to be bad for the opponent numbers, while green's going to be good. So just keep that in mind when you're looking across all the stats here. So then we've got O-line. So we've got the rushing O-line rank. We've got the pass protection O-line rank. And then we've got the opponent's defensive rushing D-line and defensive passing, the pass rush on the D-line ranking there as well. And then fantasy points against the position. So for Miami's matchup against Jacksonville, this is Jacksonville's rank against the quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and running back. So they've been pretty bad to every position outside of wide receiver. They're about middle of the league in terms of fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So that is there for every single matchup. This is where I start, and I start narrowing down the teams that I want to target and just kind of get an overall feel for the slate, looking at the totals, which games are high scoring, which ones are projected to be low scoring, and then kind of digging into the stats for each team and seeing why they're projected that way, and see, like I said, narrowing down the teams that I want to target on Sunday or Thursday if we're talking showdowns. So after that, I go through the depth chart every week, so I'll just kind of go over that. You can go every team's depth charts here, so I go through and look at that. You can quick link to any team here, so if you want to see San Francisco's depth chart rather than scrolling down and trying to find it or doing a Control F to search them, you can just hover over San Francisco and click on that link. It'll take you right to San Francisco's. Show you the running back 1, 2, 3 for the week. Obviously, I haven't got this week's done, but this is where you're going to find this depth chart information. That depth chart information is also visible on the individual tab. So I'll just jump over to running backs here real quick. Here's the depth chart over here in column C. That's going to show you the running back. So if you're kind of deciding between 1 or 2, you can kind of look at where they sit on each team's depth chart. Now, for the individual player positions, I'm going to start at quarterback. So we've got the slate. You're going to see this on every individual position tab. TNF, Thursday Night Football. Down at the bottom, you're going to see Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. You're only going to see, I cover showdown slates for only the primetime slates of Thursday, Sunday, and Monday night. So you're going to see those prices for those games, and it's going to be blank for the Sunday main slates. I just don't have time to be getting into the showdowns for those because I am into the main slate. So we've got the player, the quarterback, the team, the opponent they're playing, DraftKings and FanDuel pricing, like I said, for Showdown as well, for those primetime games. Vegas information, so we've got the spread, we've got the over-under, we've got the team projected points. Then we've got stats for the season. We've got games played, passing attempts, completions, completion percentage, passing yards, touchdowns, yards per attempt. So you can kind of get a feel of guys. This is where I really like to look for upside. Look at Russell Wilson, 9.7 yards per attempt. He likes to take shots downfield. This is the stat that tells us that. This is something I will use for GPPs. Cash games, I'm kind of looking at attempts per game. I want a quarterback that's going to throw a lot, or a quarterback that if he doesn't throw a lot, I want him to be able to, use his legs to really help us get a nice floor for cash games as well. I've got those rushing stats over here. We've got passing yards per game. We've got air yards per attempt. So again, that combined with yards per attempt is something I look at for upside. And then we get into rushing attempts, rushing yards, yards per attempt, attempts per game. So as you can see, Cam Newton, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen are kind of leading the way right now with 9, 10.5, and 13 rushing attempts per game. That gives them a really nice floor for cash games. They're taking away running back touches, obviously, but from a quarterback standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to use these types of quarterbacks in cash games, especially looking at Josh Allen. He's not only averaging 9 rushing attempts, 37.5 rushing yards per game. He's averaging right now, we're only 2 games in, so this is a small sample, but he's also averaging over 360 passing yards per game as well. So that's a great combination for a quarterback that you're looking for in cash games or all formats for that matter. He's got a ton of upside. So then with the rushing, I've also got here the defensive rushing yards per game allowed. So it just kind of gives us a look. If you've got a rushing quarterback and he's facing a defense that, maybe doesn't game plan as well to rushing quarterbacks, gives up a lot of rushes like Miami does, then we can start to break that down a little bit more as well. So then we got team ranks in blue. That's going to show the percentage of plays that are passes for that team, that team's pace, the ranking in passing yards per game, like the passing offensive ranks. That's what that is. And then right beside that, we've got the opponent's passing defensive rank. And the difference between the two, obviously a high number is going to be good. Looking at this is Dallas. Dallas has got the number 3 passing offense right now, while Seattle is dead last in passing defense. That's a plus 29 right there. That is the biggest one on the slate, so that is somewhere I'm going to target. Really helps me break down and say that Dak is going to be a great play this week. Also got a high total there as well, so it just all combines together. So then we see O-line and opponent's defensive D-line. So the O-line for Dallas is ranked 9th in the pass protection, in pass protection right now, while the opponent's defense, Seattle here, is ranked 24th in their pass rush right now. So that's a good combination there. Both are sitting in green. And then we've got red zone offense. So Cowboys are 8th in red zone offense right now, while Seattle is 26th in red zone defense. And then Seattle also allows ranks 31st in fantasy points against possession. Now, instead of coming back to this video, which you definitely can come back and review it throughout the season to kind of see how the sheet works, I'm going to share it in chat quite a bit as well. You're also going to want to look at the top here. So if you're wondering what any of the stats are, this little triangle in the top right hand corner just means I've added a note. So you can go and just hover over any of these headers here, and it's going to tell you what that stat means. So for instance, team pass percentage, team passing percentage is the percentage of total plays that are passes. So it's just going to kind of give you a quick description of what those stats are. So make sure to utilize that. That's something I brought in this year because I had a lot of questions on a daily basis of what does this stat mean. So I really wanted to add that. So moving on to running backs is going to be a little bit different here for running backs. The slate's going to be the same. Like I said, the depth chart is there. Player name, team, opponent, main slate, and showdown pricing. We've got the Vegas information here. Same thing. Scrolling over and looking at the stats, this is where we get a lot of advanced stats for running backs and wide receivers, tight ends, a lot of different stuff that we can pull in here and look at to help us. So first of all, just your basic rushing stats, games played, rushing attempts, total rushing yards, total touchdowns, yards per attempt, average yards per game, and then we've got red zone rushing. So how many rushes has that player had inside the 20, inside the 10, inside the 5, the percentage of that team's rushes inside the 20-yard line, and how many red zone touchdowns that player has. This is going to be key when looking. I look at this more. What I want for cash games, obviously, is attempts. We'll get into the touches here in a minute. But for GPP, obviously, we want upside. So I want running backs that get a lot of attempts inside the red zone because, obviously, they're going to be a lot closer to the end zone. Chance to get those 6 points for touchdowns. So then we're going to look at the player receiving here as well. It's very important. Full PPR on DraftKings, half PPR on FanDuel. So we've got total targets, average targets per game, target percentage, so that's the percentage of targets that player gets in relation to total targets for his team. Then we've got receptions, reception yards, yards per target. I'm going to be adding catch rate. I see that is not here, which is just receptions divided by targets. Total touchdowns. So then we've got red zone receiving as well. Same thing, how many targets the player gets inside the red zone, inside the 20-yard line. The red zone target percentage of targets he gets inside the red zone of all the team's red zone targets. Red zone catch percentage, and then red zone touchdowns. And then we add that all up into totals, like this would be your scrimmage yards. So total touches, total scrimmage yards, how many yards per touch, how many yards per game. This snap percentage, this is the percentage of snaps the player is on the field versus the team's total snaps during the game. And touch percentage is something I put together. This is off of the running back touch share sheet. This is the percentage of touches that this player has in relation to all the running backs on the team. The only team that's really different, I don't count quarterbacks, I just want to do the running back volume. The only team that is going to be different is Chicago. Cordarrelle Patterson kind of operates as a running back, so I've included him in that running back touch share as well. So then same as the quarterbacks, we've got the team ranks over here, team rush percentage, team pace, team rushing offensive rank versus the opponent's defensive rushing defense. And then that difference again, green is going to be good, red is going to be bad. We've got the offensive line this time looking at rush protection. Not really rush protection, but rushing O-line, their pass rush blocking, and then we've got the opponent's rush defense in there as well. And then we've got red zone data, red zone offense versus opponent's red zone defense, and fantasy points against the running back. Moving on to wide receivers and tight ends, which are going to be similar here. I'm not going to go too deep into tight ends because it's going to be the same. Again, we've got slate, player, slate pricing for showdowns and main slate, Vegas information. We've got the receiving information here, so games, targets per game for that player, target percentage. Again, that's the share of that player gets of the targets for his entire team. Receptions, catch percentage, total receiving yards, average yards per target, touchdowns, and then we get into some advanced stats. Yards after the catch, we've got ADOT, which is average depth of target. So that is another thing for wide receivers I look at from a GPP standpoint. I want receivers that are getting the ball down the field, not just catching it over the middle for 4 or 5 yard gains. I want those chunk plays. We can find that with ADOT. Same with yards after the catch. I guess that would be more running backs. It would be contact, yards after contact. We're going to be looking at that as well. And then we've got red zone information as well as snap percentage for wide receivers. So we can start comparing wide receivers on each team. Injuries are going to flaw this information a little bit, but it still gives us an insight into players, and there will be more of a breakdown of that. I'll post that kind of weekly into chat, looking at some teams and stuff like that. So then again, team ranks. We've got team pass percentage, pace, passing offensive rank, defensive passing rank, the difference between the two. Again, pass protection O-line versus pass rush D-line, red zone offense versus red zone defense, opponent red zone defense, and then opponent fantasy points against the wide receiver position. Tight end looks exactly the same, besides there's tight ends listed. And then going on to the defensive tab, we've got all the teams, the slates, pricing, Vegas information. So the only thing difference with Vegas on the defensive side is we're looking at the opponent's projected points, not the team that we're looking at's projected points. So obviously Indy's facing the Jets, who are only projected for 16.3 points right now, which is the lowest on the slate. So that's going to be in green. That's good for the Colts because points are obviously detrimental to your overall total for your defense. So then we've got points per game allowed versus the opponent's points per game, breaking that down into passing and rushing as well. And then sacks, we've got amount of sacks that team has, their blitz percentage of the time that they send a blitz outside the 4 pass rushers. If they're running a 4-3, 3 pass rushers. If they're running a 3-4, opponent sacks allowed. So obviously we want a defense that's facing an opponent with a bad O-line that allows a lot of sacks. Opponent sack percentage, so 10.5% of the time. Houston here is allowing a sack on the quarterback, so that's good. We want a high number for that. And then we've got opponent D-line ranking team D-line ranking versus the opponent's offensive pass rushing ranking, and then the difference there. So as you can see, Pittsburgh and Indy are in tremendous matchups this week, according to all the stats, and that's why they are kind of priced up there as well. So that kind of covers all the positions, everything that I'm looking at there. If you want to know, so on Thursdays, we've got the Showdown. I will start highlighting Showdown plays on the individual position tab here, but then I will also have I have a tab for top targets, and I rank my plays. So I not only give you my core plays, GPP plays, value plays, but I also want to rank them as well, which should help you go ahead and construct your Showdown lineups. I play the 20 max every single week on, like I said, Thursday, Sunday, and Monday Night Football. Always the 20 max. I'm just kind of playing around with some strategies and stuff, but that's kind of what I've decided to do this year. So I will post that usually Thursday afternoon, and then starting Friday, I'll start highlighting plays for Sunday's main slate, and then I will have rankings for those as well at each individual position, as well as some notes associated with those players to kind of give you some insight as to why I'm targeting them, why I have them ranked so high, why I have them ranked so low, just to kind of help you out there a little bit as well. Like I said, check back on the depth charts throughout the day. Red, you can also check the legend. So as I start highlighting plays on the sheet, come over here, you can check the legend. Green is a core play, and pretty much what that means is he's going to be a core play in all formats for me. Someone in my 20 max builds for GPP that I'm going to have probably 30 to 40% exposure, pretty high exposure to those players. The players in blue, which are going to be labeled here as GPP plays, those are just players I feel have a high ceiling, but don't have, they're not safe on a week-to-week basis enough to use as a cash game play. So maybe a little bit less exposure than the core plays in my GPP builds, and I won't have any of these blue plays in cash games. Value plays are just a player, usually in like the low, not necessarily a punt, but someone that I think can definitely outdo their value and give us like 3-4x value for their price. Those are going to be the players in yellow. And if there's a value play that I feel isn't cash worthy, I guess you could say, he's going to be in blue. So you will see some players that are kind of down in that 3-4K range that are in blue, and if you're wondering why, those I just won't be using them in cash games. While if you see players in yellow, those are players value plays I will consider. Cash game plays, just players I feel don't have a high ceiling for whatever reason, but do, because of volume or whatever, do give us a nice floor. This is maybe like on DraftKings, a running back that doesn't get a lot of catches, but he is getting 15 to 20 carries per week in a favorable matchup where maybe they're favorites, where I feel that he's going to get the yardage and those carries, but just the upside is just not going to be there, whether it be maybe a low-scoring game. Those are going to be cash games only. And then for injuries, light pink here, kind of light red or whatever you want to call it, that's just kind of doubtful. Those are players that I'm going to be checking back on. Those are going to be also questionable players that are maybe trending towards not playing. And then we've got deep red here, which is going to be injured or out. Something I will be adding to the sheet here is a injury report. Will be like a list of all the players at different positions that I'm tracking, what their injury is, and kind of when we're expecting to hear about that. So that's going to be new. I think for this week it's going to be in chat. You're going to be able to find that in chat. But moving forward, I'm going to add that to the sheet so all the information's there in one place. That pretty much covers everything for me in terms of my DFS sheet. This is something that comes out every week, usually released Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. The schedule for when the content comes out on the sheet is listed in chat as well. And if you have any questions, just definitely hit me up in chat. I'm available almost 24/7. I do sleep sometimes, but really not very much. So hit me up with some questions. I can explain some stuff to you, whether it be contest selection, how to go about looking at more advanced stats in the sheet, and how I go about constructing my lineups and narrowing down. Definitely hit me up about that as well. There's going to be some videos coming in the future talking strategy, going a little bit deeper into this, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks for all the support, and let's go out there and let's get some green screens this weekend. Thanks a lot, everybody. Good luck.